Hey guys, it's your best five friends. I'm Kelsey. This is Rachel. Rachel, what'd you think about UFC 252?
I have to say, compared to other recent cards, I felt like most of the action and interest for me was in the main event. We watched the early prelims all the way to the end, and the biggest thing, aside from like great heavyweight action times two, was O'Malley, right?
Yeah, Sean O'Malley suffered the huge upset loss to Marlon Vera. And yeah, he was positioned, right, to be the next big thing, the next Conor McGregor. Well, the next Conor McGregor injured himself in the fight and then was brutally beat down with some elbows.
Yeah.
Lost by knockout. That's a tough break. That's a hard thing to have happen to you in your career, and it's going to be a hard thing to come back from.
But I would like to say that given how young his UFC career is, I think that this can be particularly really good for him, because sometimes when you experience adversity, it can be really helpful, and as you move on in your career, as I think especially when you've had the marketing machine of the UFC behind you, maybe things have seemed a little easier. I don't know if they seemed easy to O'Malley, but from the outside, other fighters might be like...
I bet Marlon Vera thought it seemed easier for O'Malley than it did for him.
Right. But congrats to Vera, right?
Yeah.
Because in that first round, he was focused, and he saw where he could take his opportunity to seize his victory, and he did exactly that.
Can we get to the main event?
Okay. Main event time. We have, Stipe and DC, big heavyweights.
The most important UFC heavyweight championship in history.
Apparently.
Ever. And there will never be a bigger fight, people.
And yeah, it went all 5 rounds. Do you think, what is your gauge? Did not a lot of people expect that?
Some people did and some people didn't, Rachel. I don't know. I think that both showed what great fighters they were. Both showed how resilient they were. I thought Stipe got off to a really great start, and I thought that Cormier, again, I feel like in the first fight, he got the knockout in the first round, right? But in the second fight, I feel like he fell in love with the idea of knocking Stipe out. In fact, he told me that when I talked to him earlier in the week. But in this fight, I would have liked to see him try to wrestle more. He said, bring your wrestling shoes. Bring your wrestling shoes. He didn't really do that. And yeah, ironic, Rachel, that he would suffer an eye poke in this fight, since he was the one committing all the eye poke fouls in the first 2 fights, one of them to which Stipe had to have surgery for. Yeah. Also in this fight, he poked him, and then the poke, there's a poke and then a
poke back.
A counter poke, and the counter poke really hurt him, damaged him. I don't think that really...
His eye didn't look good.
I feel like he was already losing the fight. He lost by 3 points on the scorecard, so I didn't help him, but I think that Stipe showed that he is the premier heavyweight champion in the UFC. Obviously the only heavyweight champion, but you know what I mean, the premier UFC heavyweight right now, and that's a huge thing. That's a massive win. A lot of people were picking DC. A lot of people thought maybe Miocic. It was a pretty even fight.
It was a pick'em fight, and what you had mentioned before, that Stipe was so big and powerful. He's a true heavyweight. Yeah. DC may not be a true heavyweight.
Stipe couldn't not be a heavyweight. That's what a heavyweight is.
But Stipe, what I saw in this fight is not only, of course, does he have that size advantage, but I thought he brought in some more skill to this fight too. I saw, so I don't know. I just thought I saw more skill from Stipe, and I think he capitalized on the first 2 fights and learned. And
he's just a good fighter.
And then when I looked at DC, when he came in, he seemed a little. I don't know if it was nerves or it seemed like he wasn't quite ready.
It's probably a really difficult thing to fight in this environment, and then
there's no crowd there,
pressure on yourself that this is your last fight.
Retirement, yeah.
I feel like he said,
I just felt like there was a weight on DC that was visible. DC did have moments though in this fight where I was like, oh, he might do something. He might You know, like, these were two heavyweights, and I remember sitting there watching the fight thinking, I was like, you know what? If you're in a small weight class, it's almost always going to be skill that wins the day. And not that it's not skill in bigger, but the bigger the weight class is, the more the adage of like a puncher's chance comes into play.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there because seeing both these big guys, you know, in the cage together, I was like, man, this could just end with one punch. DC could end this with one punch, and vice versa. And I was like, gosh, that's like kind of crazy because it's an added level of danger in a heavyweight fight. And it was just, I feel like I saw two guys in there, you know, on this day bring the best that they had. And Stipe came out the winner. Surprisingly, decision, unanimous, not that it was a surprising unanimous decision, but I kind of thought it would be a knockout.
He almost knocked him out in one of the rounds. Really hurt him, and DC just had to hold on for dear life. It was for the end.
Yeah. So you excited? Stipe versus perhaps Francis Ngannou?
John Jones is saying that he wants that work now. On
What
Twitter.
do they make first? Like, I feel like
that they have to make Francis gets to, either Francis gets to fight Stipe or he gets to fight John Jones.
Right. Well, John Jones had like that fight has some shelf life, right? Like, so I feel like you can have Francis first.
And I think like John Jones knows that. He said in the past that he wants to move the heavyweight the right way. So I think
that would allow him to do that. Like, more time. Like, he needs time.
He's been, like, putting on that muscle if you follow him on Instagram. I think that he'll say one thing, but what will actually happen is Francis Ngannou will fight Miocic next.
What do you think about...
I don't know. Maybe he wants to fight him right now. Who knows? People change their minds.
What do you think about John Jones taking, like, a not-so-high-profile heavyweight opponent his first fight at heavyweight?
Like not fighting Stipe or Francis?
Well, like, you know, like I wasn't in boxing. I was like, Mikey Garcia, why are you going to fight, you know, Earl Spence right out of the gate?
I don't know. I feel like John Jones, that would be wise for most people. But for John Jones, I don't think it is wise. The reason I think John Jones wants to move up to heavyweight is because I think he's been so good for so long. I honestly think it's hard for him to get up for his everyday title defenses. He's got a bazillion of them. It's just a string of guys. I think he wants to move up to heavyweight because he wants to feel that fear that most people have when they go into a fight. And for him to do that, he's going to have to fight either Francis or Stipe, right? Heavyweight champion, or the uncrowned heavyweight champion is what they call him. So I don't know. I'm excited about all those fights. Can't wait to see what happens.
Yeah. Hey, and if you're, you know, I don't know what the transition is.
If you can't wait to see what happens, or even if you can, go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe to Real Talk with Kelsey and Rachel. You know, I don't always talk with my head, but sometimes I shake it a little when I talk like this. That's what video is.
Some people talk with their hands. Kelsey talks with, like, his head movement.
And sometimes I'm like, and you can take that to the bank.
His hands completely still, but that head...
I'm like a little bobble.
Kelsey bobblehead, that's what I need. I got it.
You already got one.